โอเคนะครับก็สำหรับโรงเรียนอิสกาเนี่ยเป็นโรงเรียนบอร์ดดิ้งนะครับเป็นโรงเรียนเอกชนที่ตั้งอยู่ในจริงๆอยู่ในขอบชายเมืองของลอนดอนนะครับจะใช้ระยะเวลาในการเดินทางเนี่ยอยู่ประมาณ1 ชั่วโมงถึง1 ชั่วโมงครึ่งนะครับจากตัวลอนดอนนะครับซึ่งอิสกาเนี่ยจริงๆถ้าเป็นที่รู้จักจากที่ APS ไทยเนี่ยเราจะพูดถึงตัวโปรแกรมที่เป็น A-level ซะเป็นส่วนใหญ่นะครับแต่จริงๆแล้วเนี่ยโรงเรียนอิสกายังมีโปรแกรมอื่นๆอีกหลายตัวนะครับไม่ว่าจะเป็นโปรแกรมที่เป็น pre-A-level นะครับเป็นโปรแกรม Portfolio หรือว่าเป็นตัว Foundation นะครับที่เป็น Diploma ออนไลน์ด้วยนะครับทีนี้จุดเด่นที่ทำให้โรงเรียน ISCA เนี่ยแตกต่างจากโรงเรียนอื่นก็คือโรงเรียน ISCA นะครับเป็นโรงเรียนspecialize ทางด้านอาร์ตโดยเฉพาะนะครับเขาจะทำให้เด็กๆเนี่ยสามารถเลือกวิชาในช่วงของ A-level เนี่ยได้มากถึง2วิชาด้วยกันนะครับซึ่งจะแตกต่างจากโรงเรียนทั่วไปนะครับที่น้องๆที่สนใจทางด้านอาร์ตเนี่ยจะเลือกวิชา A-level นะครับทางด้านอาร์ตได้แค่ตัวเดียวนะครับซึ่งถ้าเราดูจากตัวสกรีนนะครับน้องๆจะสามารถเลือกได้จาก4 วิชาตรงนี้นะครับ Fine Art Graphic Communication นะครับ Fashion and Textile แล้วก็ 3D นะครับแล้วก็จะมีตัวที่บังคับเนี่ยจะเป็น History of Art นะครับใช่แล้วนอกเหนือจากการเลือกเรียนวิชาใน A-level ที่เลือกวิชาอาร์ตได้มากถึง2ตัวแล้วเนี่ยอีกจุดเด่นหนึ่งนะครับที่ทำให้อิสกาเนี่ยแตกต่างจากโรงเรียนอื่นก็คือการที่เขามีตัว Special Program นะครับที่มีเฉพาะที่อิสกานะครับเป็นหนึ่งในไม่กี่โรงเรียนที่มีโปรแกรมนี้นะครับก็คือน้องๆที่อยู่ในช่วงของyear 13เนี่ยจะมีโอกาสได้เข้าไปเรียนที่ Central Saint Martin นะครับอาทิตย์ละ1 ครั้งซึ่งจริงๆถ้าน้องๆต้องการสมัครเข้า University ทางด้านอาร์ตนะครับในประเทศอังกฤษเนี่ยจะต้องทำตัว Foundation อย่างน้อย1 ปีนะครับก่อนที่จะเข้าไปเรียนปี 1ได้ ซึ่งถ้าน้องๆที่ไปเรียนที่ ISCA เนี่ยก็จะมีโอกาสได้นำ Foundation เนี่ยมาเรียนก่อนนะครับในช่วงของ Year 13ซึ่งจะเปิดโอกาสให้น้องๆเนี่ยได้เรียนรู้หรือฝึกฝนทักษะต่างๆนะครับให้มีความพร้อมก่อนที่จะเข้าไปเรียนในตัว UAL ได้นะครับโดยเฉพาะ UAL นะครับแต่จริงๆ ISCA เนี่ยสามารถปั้นน้องๆเข้าไป University ทางด้านอื่นได้ด้วยนะครับซึ่งอันนี้จะเป็นรายชื่อของ University นะครับที่น้องๆที่เรียนที่ยิสกาเนี่ยเข้าไปเมื่อปีที่แล้วนะครับก็สำหรับใครที่ต้องการข้อมูลเพิ่มเติมเกี่ยวกับโรงเรียนอิสกาเนี่ยก็สามารถทักเข้ามาสอบถามที่เจ้าหน้าที่ได้นะครับหลังจากเว็บบินาร์หรือว่าสอบถามได้เรื่อยๆเลยนะครับก็เดี๋ยวผมให้ทางคุณคอลินนะครับหรือว่าทางเรียนอิสกาเนี่ยพูดถึงเรื่องตัวการสร้างพอร์ตโฟลิโอนะครับที่เหมาะสมกับตัว Top University ทางด้านอาร์ตนะครับโอเค
Okay, we ready then?
yes
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. If by way of introduction, before we begin talking about our main theme, my name is Colin Kerrigan. I'm the Executive Director of the International School of Creative Arts. And for many years before I set ISCA up, I used to be director level at University of the Arts London. And my subject, I used to teach at a college called Central St. Martin's College. So throughout most of my academic career, I've spent my time preparing students with portfolios to go on to higher level courses. And my colleague here, Celia Mannanen, is going to introduce herself and some of her background. She's our specialist lead tutor in fashion design and portfolio preparation. I'm going to hand to you for a moment, Celia.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you for coming to this webinar on portfolios. My background is I graduated from the MA in Central St. Martin's, focusing on fashion design with women's wear, and worked as a head women's wear designer for 10 plus years in international brands in London. And then I've entered education now about 10 years ago, sort of focusing on
เขาจะไปเรียนอาร์ตแล้วครูเขาให้หนูประชุมกับโรงเรียนที่นู่น
Sorry, preparing students for further higher education and foundation level studies as well. So it's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give just a very brief overview, then I'm going to hand back to Celia, who's going to go through a presentation about what makes a portfolio good. So first thing to say is that ISCA is a school, but it's also a portfolio centre. And for a number of years, we've been incredibly successful preparing students' portfolios to go on to top universities in both the UK, in Europe, and in America. And there are particular things that you need to focus in on when you're preparing a portfolio. So in terms of portfolio preparation, we are specialists at doing that. Not just in one subject, not just in fashion design, but in all of the different specialist subjects. So all aspects of fashion and textile design, all aspects of graphic or visual communication design, all aspects of 3D design, product design, architecture, and all aspects of fine art. So we are specialists with portfolio preparation. And there are key things that you can be taught to prepare a good portfolio. I'm going to pause for a moment and hand back to Celia, who's going to start a presentation with us.
Absolutely. Can I just check that the screen is sharing? Can you all see the screen of mine?
Yes, so we can see. I can see it. Yeah. We can see it.
Excellent. Yeah. So we are going to do a webinar on portfolio and what is a portfolio, and that is actually our question to our participants today. Could anybody tell us what they understand by what is a portfolio from your perspective? Is anyone brave enough to answer this? What is a portfolio? Any of our student participants?
Okay, so we'll move on then, yes?
Okay, that's fine. So from our perspective, and with the years and years of experience of our staff here, it's a documentation of your creative journey as an artist or as a designer. Colin, you'll know so much about this, having seen portfolios for many years, but it shows the way you work, how you think in your art and design subjects and in your work. And it's also a document of your work over a period of time. So it shows how you evolve, and it shows how you develop, and it shows how you resolve design issues and come up with new ideas. Also important way to show what you're inspired by, what inspires you, and what kind of makes you tick as a designer, an artist, or student. It's very important that it shows your originality, what makes you stand out. So it's your work, very personal. And it is something that evolves. Even myself as a practicing fashion designer, I have to update my portfolio. It will go same for any practicing artist or designer. So it's not only to do with your schoolwork or your university studies. You will, as a creative, always have a portfolio that you update.
Can I come in for a moment, Christine? Do you mind, Celia? That's exactly what it is. The portfolio is something which stays with you throughout your professional career. I started my portfolio when I became seriously involved in art when I was around 14 years of age. I remember I've still got my very first sketch print that I did between the age of 14 and 16 years of age. And my portfolio then was focused on drawing, because we believe that a good portfolio demonstrates strong visual skills, the ability to understand the world around you. So initially, this portfolio, which goes on throughout your life, shows your initial starting point is generally looking at the world around you. And so the portfolio, starting from that very basic beginning when you're younger, showing your curiosity for the world around you, and then evolving and developing throughout your life. So when you start off, you may be drawing and painting, and then later introducing concepts and ideas and designs to it as it develops over a period of time. But the key thing is, with this document, this portfolio at the beginning, you must be showing your teachers or those who are assessing you at university a good understanding of what you're like. They want to get an insight into your personality, what interests you, what inspires you, how good you are technically with things, how well you draw, how well you use color, how well you work with mixed media. And through that, they're starting to get an idea of something to do that's personal to you, how original you can be, what makes you stand out as a person. And the key thing is, they're not looking for everything to be perfect. in a portfolio, it must show experimental work that you've done, some of which really worked well, some of which didn't work so well, and others that maybe just failed. But it shows that you're actively questioning and experimenting. So when you think of that first part of it, it's personal, it goes with you throughout your lives, and it shows a range of inspirations and experiments that show what you are alike as a person.
Absolutely.
So
That's true. And I think one important thing is also being coherent. We talked about this in our chat earlier. Coherence. So the things are kind of linking to each other. There's a development that shows, you don't just have sort of disparate things that are not connected to each other, but you show projects where we can see the whole process of your starting points through experimentation, development to a final outcome. And I think the sense of curiosity is very important. University tutors, school tutors, progression tutors want to see that students are interested in what's around them, and they are, aware of what's going on, not just in the design project they're doing, but also perhaps other contexts, what's happening in the news. You could have inspiration that shows that you are interested in the world around you. So anything like that, an investigation is always really, really good to show. It is also important to show skills, of course, drawing, painting, composition, 3D, anything that sort of you're good at or you're practicing. So that is also very, very important.
I can go back to some of those points, Celia, on the
Yes.
second slide. So I think those are really key points. So the first point is, what should be in a progression portfolio? What should be in your portfolio if you're applying for an A-level course or a foundation course or a degree course at university? You never show everything. You select it. 2 to 3 projects showing how they've gone right from the beginning, the initial ideas, right the way through to final outcomes would be a good selection. Don't have too many projects. Select the projects, select the work. And that word coherent. Coherent really means that it tells a story. Things link. There's a story, there's a thread running through your work. So when someone outside looks at your portfolio, when I used to look at portfolios at CSM, I'd want to see that the student, the applicant to my course, had directed their work in a particular way. They were in charge of their work. They were trying to tell me something about the questions they'd asked when they were developing that particular project or theme. So it has to be coherent. Someone's in there thinking it through. You're the person thinking it through, not just your teacher. You're in control of your portfolio. And personal is a really important word, because you're showing that you can personally be enthusiastic about things. You're personally investigating things. You're looking at the world around you with curiosity, a sense of wonder, if you like, finding things really fascinating and interesting. And some of the best artists or designers can take the smallest thing and make something really profound out of it. It's not always taking big, complex subjects. It may be the smallest things. Okay. So when you look at someone like Cézanne's still life paintings, Cézanne, just simple apples, simple jugs or plates or bowls or pots. He gave them a meaning as if they're actually speaking to you. So the simplest thing can be the most profound thing. And once again, to repeat that connectivity, the connections. So when you're making it easy for someone to look at your work, they can see that you're making connections. You're making intellectual and emotional connections. They can see how you're thinking. You're visualizing your thinking. They start to make connections with you when they're assessing your work. So when I used to be looking at many, many portfolios, even if the work wasn't always the highest standard, if a student was actively thinking, actively experimenting, actively curious, I'm immediately interested in that student. So I feel there's a lot of potential to develop there. If someone is just very, very good technically, but not very curious and not actively thinking, there's not so much potential. So we really are looking for that potential to drive that story along, to drive those themes along, to drive that curiosity along. And that shows the best of your creativity. That's what being creative is. Creative is someone who asks questions, someone who doesn't just settle things for things on face value, someone who can make connections between things that are different, that are disparate, bringing disparate things together that don't normally come together. And by bringing them together, a new entity, a new form emerges, a new idea emerges. So that shows the best of your creativity through making those connections. But obviously you need those good art design skills. And throughout your career now, if you came to ISCA or if you went off to the University of the Arts, you'd be developing your visual skills, your drawing, your use of colour, your working with materials. So any portfolio needs to show you're developing those skills. And one of the key skills on any course you're applying for in the visual arts is drawing. Because drawing is an investigation. It's not just showing off, I can do things easily. It's an investigation. Drawing is the clearest thing that visualizes your thinking. We call it visual thinking. It is your visual thinking into a kind of, it's your imagination coming onto the paper. It's your understanding of the world around you coming onto the paper. So drawing is a key skill that develops your imagination, develops your thinking, and in addition, when you become a professional designer or artist, it's the quickest way, the most direct way, the most economical way you can communicate with a client, to just sketch. This is what I'm thinking of. I want to make that. I want to develop this idea. This is my fashion idea. This is my textile idea. This is the interior I want to make. So sketching and color skills are fundamental to those. So we can't stress this slide enough. Thank you, Celia.
Thank you so much. Very briefly, students often ask, so how many projects should be in a portfolio? What should be in a project when you present it in a portfolio? So oftentimes the process of a project in a portfolio would have clear indication of what your research was, so what the theme was, what your starting point was. So, your images that inspire the project, presented on some sort of visual concept or a mood board. You'd often start a portfolio project with a visual starting point, showing where your inspiration came from. That can include contextual research, historical research, artist research, primary research. So all of those things that you gathered to in the beginning of the project that you will use as inspiration.
And these are really good checkpoints, aren't they, Celia?
Yes.
They're really good checkpoints to have that may be useful for all of them to keep a copy of these. And that theme really is starting with an idea.
Yeah.
A theme is an idea, and it may be just a very simple, basic idea. It may be the environment. It may be the city in Bangkok. My starting point is the city. And we may say, Bangkok is a great city, by the way. I've been going to Bangkok for about 30 years. Wonderful city. And the city, you may say, the city by day. The city by night. The city by day and the city by night are totally different, aren't they? When you taste the atmosphere of Bangkok at night time, or you see a different city in the daytime, everything's cleaned up and people are going about their business. But at night time, it's dark and all the lights and the hustle and the bustle of the crowds. So the theme could be the city by day and by night.
Absolutely.
What is that primary and secondary research? Every portfolio should have it. Primary research is things you've seen yourself. Things you're looking at and investigating yourself. You may be on the spot sketching or drawing. You may be taking your own photographs. You may be doing your own sampling of materials or colour mixing. That's primary research. It's research you've done. Secondary research, maybe you've looked at, say, and being inspired by an artist or a designer. Or you've looked at an image that has inspired you. So things that exist would be secondary research. Things that you're doing yourself and inventing yourself or putting together yourself is primary research. Every portfolio should have a mix of primary and secondary research.
Absolutely.
Contextual research, what does that mean, context? And there's a wonderful phrase that many people, and I'm sure that Crew2 Homeschool have mentioned this to you, many UK universities say, if you're reading your subject, and your subject may be history, or your subject may be politics, if you're reading your subject to understand the subject, you read around the subject. You don't just read the subject. That's the same in art and design. The context is reading around it. He's looking at the broader picture of what relates to your subject. So when you think of contextual research, you may be doing the city by day or by night, but looking at something that isn't just about Bangkok. It may be related to other cities. It may be related to artists who've looked at that. You may be looking at the French Impressionists. You may be looking at someone like Toulouse-Lautrec, the great French master who did the city by day or by night. So there's other things contextually and historically that can inspire you. You may not look at art and design at all. You may be saying the contextual research is, I'm trying to understand why the environment is the way it is. And you may look at the global warming situation. You may be inspired by science. You may be inspired by the research into new materials. You may be inspired by the political situation at the moment. So science, politics, the environment could all influence the way you're working. And many top universities want to see that contextual research and thinking. Experimentation is central to your portfolio. Not just accepting the techniques, you're finding new ways of doing things, new combinations of materials, new ways of making a mark, new ways of making something fit onto the body, new ways of structuring a building so it doesn't fall over, new ways of building a sculpture out of materials that aren't normally associated with sculpture. So you're looking at other ways of working with materials. And idea development inspired by those experiments. Your experiments must feed into your concept, into your ideas. And the ideas feeding into not one final outcome, but have many outcomes. You may have many pieces of fashion design that it's inspired, many works of architecture it's inspired, many works of interior design it may inspire. This is what those admissions tutors at top universities are looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if what you were saying about, again, we come back to those things, the curiosity, the connectivity. So I think what would be a very not recommended thing, for example, something to avoid would be to have experimentation, but then development that doesn't link to that, or a final outcome that doesn't link to your development or experiments. That would be something to avoid in an art and design project.
It's got to link and be coherent, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It must link and tell that story.
Yes, show how you develop
really
the
good
idea.
headings there, Celia, for all of our participants to keep. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think we have a couple of practical sort of tips about portfolio. So obviously, the format or the way to prepare portfolio is specific for each university and each school. A lot of portfolios are looked at digitally nowadays, especially if you're an international student and sending your work over. Digital files are quite usual now, but a lot of our students, a lot of university students still create a physical portfolio and then document that and create a digital file out of it. Generally, it's about 20 to 30 pages. Some universities ask for 15, some for 18. UAL often is 20 to 30. Us, we would like to see a lot of work as well. So it really depends, but that's a general guideline. And as I said, most of the time, even if you do a physical portfolio, you will have to digitize it so that tutors abroad can also have a look at it with ease. So that was just some practical information.
I think that's a really important point as well. If we go back to that other slide, Celia.
Yes.
Because we teach you to do both formats.
Yes.
And we think it's really important. Even though we know most universities at this particular time are looking for digital portfolios. We think it's important that you're taught to do a physical portfolio as well. Yes. And the reason being, because the way things look to the future aren't always the way they develop in the future.
Mm.
What we want to do is to give you skills for life. Things could change over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So we want you to have the traditional skills of doing a physical portfolio, as well as the new skills of doing a digital portfolio.
Mm.
And you could learn different things by doing a physical portfolio to doing a digital portfolio. The great thing about a physical portfolio is it's incredibly demanding. And because it's demanding and it's labor intensive, I feel that you learn a lot. We both agree, wouldn't you, Sid?
Yes,
You
I've
learn a
definitely.
lot by doing that physical portfolio. And
I've-
I think that many universities very soon may
Mm.
start to require both again. Because
Yeah.
I think people realize it's a little bit like music,
Mm.
that everyone went off vinyls, you know, the old records, and just all digital tracks. Now, suddenly, the largest developing area in the world is vinyl. Everyone's going back to physical recording
Yeah.
as well as digital. And I think because it has more texture to it, it has more sound quality. And I think the physical portfolio is a necessary skill if things suddenly change for you. You need those techniques. And you also need the cropping and the editing techniques to do a really good virtual portfolio. So we
Exactly.
try to teach you both because we think the universities could change their minds.
Exactly.
I think
And
it's really, I think 20 to 30 pages is plenty. Yes, please, Celia, you do come.
plenty. No, just to say about that, I've had students who have started a digital portfolio and then they said, Miss, I actually feel like I will generate better ideas. And we've gone to
Yeah.
the physical, cutting by hand, collaging, drawing, and it actually, you know, you develop ideas differently on those boards when you do them physically. So
New ideas and some better ideas, don't you?
yes, exactly. So yeah,
I think it's partly the physical involvement with material. And in
it is.
addition to that, it takes longer. So your
Yes.
thinking is different. And because you're slowing down your thinking, then and you're catching up with working, more
Yeah.
ideas. So they're both different thinking bases. Digital is very fast, physical is quite slow. So in fact, it can make a much richer portfolio when you bring the two together.
Absolutely.
And one final thing, I think that the A2 format is a pretty good format. It's easy to. A1 is a bit big and clumsy, but A2 is generally a good requirement for most universities. Please, over to you, Sid.
It gives a good sort of platform to curate your work, to organize your work. And just a few, we will go to some examples after this, I promise, sorry about this. But layout, so you know, how to present the work on a portfolio board. Generally, you know, if you're cutting things by hand, make sure they're cut very neatly and beautifully. You know, you have to show that love for your work, that you really love what you're doing and you really take care of it. Again, show ideas logically from left to right, if possible. Tutors at universities often look from left to right, so starting point, outcome. It can be confusing if you sort of put things in a kind of wrong or different order that doesn't follow your idea logically. Again, things that link together sort of visually, thematically. So I have a board here that with the rope, and you can see the student has done 2 studies of the rope, and that's on one portfolio board. So it's very kind of clear what they're investigating on that specific board. So there's not many different unconnected things. It's all very easy to look at.
I think those admissions tutors looking at good layout gain an insight into the personality and the way a student works.
Yes.
And when I used to look at many portfolios, the layout would be really important because it gave me an insight into their design sensibility.
Yes.
By being accurate and measuring things out and careful with something, you can start to see that ability as a designer, that ability as an artist, that ability to make things as carefully as you can to be as powerful as you want them to be. And an artist or a designer would actually make very subtle changes to really empower an image to make something read as well as they can make it read. So sometimes someone may have not an incredible portfolio, but I would be really, really impressed by the way they put the things together. The layout does give a very strong indication of the way someone works as a designer or as an artist. And I like that phrase, less is more. Just lots and lots of things piled in doesn't mean it's more effective. Taking things away, letting things breathe, letting things have their own space is important too. So the viewer can really focus in and make a judgment of your work. So I think more interesting notes for our candidates there, Celia.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, the next slide, please.
Yes, just really briefly breaking down some examples of, this is an example of a board with some research. The student traveled to Marrakesh and was very inspired by the colors and the costume. So that was a visual starting point for a project. And we talked already about researching contextually as well as visually when you have your theme. And talking about sort of originality with this student, you can see at the very top left corner, there's a little blob in a very strange position. But actually, this was her original way of presenting work. It actually really worked in that portfolio. I would usually not recommend adding weird disparate elements to the corners of a portfolio board. But when in this specific student's case, it actually was kind of her signature and it sort of worked. It brought this kind of naive, simple quirkiness to the portfolio, and the student progressed to CSM.
Fascinating, that board, isn't it, Celia? Well, when you look at it, it's almost the sights, the sounds, the atmosphere, and the smells of Marrakesh.
Yes.
It condenses all of those qualities of this North African country.
Yeah.
It's a North African country that has a certain colour.
Yes.
The fabrics are a certain colour. The light is a certain intensity. The
Exactly.
kind of the quality and the texture of the fabrics is a certain quality and texture. So
Yeah.
when you look at that image, it sort of condenses and brings together the sights, sounds, and emotions of Marrakesh.
That's right.
If I were looking at that as admissions tutor at CSM or another leading university, I think, that's really important research, because that's the big general view.
Absolutely.
So I've started off with a big general view. Now I'm looking for more details.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going into experimentation, a material experimentation, this student was exploring their materials, recycled materials, sustainability. As designers, I think young designers have a responsibility to think about a more sustainable future, if you like. So exploring material and testing things out is really, really important. Exploring those formal elements of art and design, such as color, texture, line, shape, form, pattern, and also even function, how something could work, showing visually how you've tried things on the body or in a space, and sort of exploring your ideas in different contexts is really important.
I think that idea of using material in a thoughtful way too is really important, isn't it? Because it's so easy to say, I can only experiment if I have really expensive materials and I'm wasteful with them.
Yes.
I think it's much more challenging to say that the time that we live in now, we can no longer be that wasteful.
Yeah.
We need to make do and work with what we have in the most economic way. And I think the top universities are certainly looking for people who are sympathetic to that way of thinking, not just wasteful, not just sort of saying I can work with only expensive things, to work with this material and make the maximum wonderful design out of it.
I can tell a little.
Isn't it?
Exactly. And on this, if you have a look on the left hand side, there's this messy sort of strings coming out of the material. Student collected that material from the beach, so she was collecting plastic from the beach, and then ended up using it in her work, which is a wonderful way to do primary research and actually use it as part of your project as well.
And it's showing you're not just all ego. It's not just about me. You're saying, I want to be a designer. I want to be as creative as I can be, but I'm sensitive to nature.
Yes,
I'm sensitive to the climate. I'm sensitive to the world we live in. I'm not
that's
just
right.
all ego. It's not just all about me.
No,
It's how
exactly.
I can be effective in this day and age and be
Yeah,
respectful and sensitive to other people and other things. And I
exactly.
think there's a real space for that, isn't there, Celia?
There
Particularly
is.
things like textile design, particularly in
Yeah.
architecture or product design.
Architecture, yeah. Anywhere where you have
All of
materials.
those working with real material.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously design development, an example from a student who was using the bathroom as the inspiration, and that led to loads of experiments on bathroom curtain-like things on the body. Again, these are all from different projects, but we've tried to take a snapshot of, for example, in here, idea development from research. So this again applies to every subject, and those ideas, all of those things that you've tested out and tried out will then lead to a type of final outcome, which should show your sort of best of the most developed ideas, where you've tried to select, combine, put together, and then see what comes out of it and select kind of your favorite. And often in this
And they're
stage,
beautiful. Those two images are beautiful, aren't they? They're beautiful images.
yeah, that's right.
And I mean, the
They are,
bathroom one, it's sort of an in-depth look at the simplest things that we take for granted every day.
yes,
And
yes.
those simple things that we take for granted in our bathrooms are filtering their way into being top, really cutting-edge design. And the second
Exactly.
one are those wonderful samples of
Yes.
knit. And I mean, there's
Yeah,
so much experimentation there, isn't there?
it is. And this is actually an outcome for the beach project, where this was the material experimentation, but it led into this kind of textile outcome. The student went to Central St. Martin textile design. So again, you can see those connections filter through to the final outcomes in the projects. Again, we talked a little bit about inspiration, creating a visual starting point. So a kind of a mood board, if you like, or concept board. So often the beginning of the project, you would present that. And we will now have a look at this one example here on the right. This was a project about a grandma, young grandma, I think. And then it kind of led into an investigation of the lifestyle that the grandma led as a young person and then as an older person, and a great project, but that was the visual starting point. So I think we are ready to go to our examples. We have quite a few, quite a few examples that we will show you from our past and current students' portfolios. And at this stage, I just wanted to ask, does anyone have any questions before we move on to our samples? Okay. So also what we wanted to bring up today in the webinar was that we obviously at ISCA have a progression of our own, starting from the level 2 students, and we'll show you some examples of the level 2 work first, and you'll see the development that students go through when they then move on to the AS and A level or foundation course. So starting from level 2, these are more sort of presentation boards rather than portfolio boards. In level 2, students work into an A2 format, showing their creative ideas and research experiments and things like that. So you will see the progression from our level 2 students to the A-level students, basically. And again, this is from one project, just showing the concept board, mood board, starting points, and then sort of how the students started experimenting with different materials. And here felting, responding to artist research, responding by drawing and felting. So this is the level 2 students. I just want to remind everyone. So when you would first come and do your first year at ISCA, illustration, screen printing, again, a lot of, I guess, learning of techniques and materials that students then expand on in their A-level studies. Thinking, trying out, combining, sketching, testing different techniques.
Yeah,
very,
these
very
are very young students, aren't they, Celia?
Yes,
They're
very
14, 15 years of age. And what we find, we're doing
Yes.
really well with students coming very young now. And about 10 years ago, young students wouldn't come to ISCA. Now we find many, many young students want to come to ISCA.
Yes.
And the reason being because the communication with the internet has changed.
Mhm.
And I think that young people are much more informed than they were 10, 15 years ago. So some of
Yes.
our young students who come to us on level 2, 14, 15 years of age, actually know what they want to do. They want to do art and design. They may not know which subject they want to do, but they want to do art and design as a main career. So that's why
Absolutely.
it's developed. I think it's because they have more information at their fingertips. And this is a
Yeah.
really important course because it develops their technical and their intellectual skills and their research skills before they come onto the A-level program.
Exactly. That's right.
Right
And
at
even
the beginning, this is right at the beginning with very young students.
I
And look at
sometimes
experimental, they're incredibly experimental.
I find the level 2 student work sometimes really, really inspiring. And actually, our year 1 and year 2 students are sometimes looking at what they're doing.
You can learn
But
from them.
yeah, learning from them. Obviously, now we're moving on to the AS level to A level portfolio examples. And we've added the progression of those students to the portfolio board example. So here are 2 physical boards, actually physical portfolio boards. Both of these students went to fashion design with knit, focus with knit. And again, it shows experimentation, starting points, rich with kind of visual information. Quite busy, but still quite simple. There's kind of considered chaos on these boards, I would call it, if you like. So your portfolio board doesn't always have to be very, very clean, but it's important that you create this kind of exciting composition that's easy to follow, and that is something that you develop with the right guidance, which we at ISCA can provide, obviously. Fashion communication, image and promotion, again, including a lot of image making, photo shoots, styling, typography, creating visuals, sort of strong visual images.
That comes
Again,
across a really good board, doesn't it?
yes,
That really
very
does communicate the idea very well.
this project was about a sugar rush, and how sugar gives us this energy. And yeah, I think it's really, really interesting how the students communicated that. Here we have some textile design boards. Again, we're moving from digital board to physical boards. You can see that there is a slightly different language in both. I guess subjects like textile design does lend itself well for working physically, whereas things more graphic promotion, marketing projects could be sometimes easier to communicate digitally.
Or
So
image-based, isn't it?
or image-based, exactly. Fashion communication, image and promotion, another example of a photo shoot and manipulating photographs. So that's one board. Really exciting kind of collage and montage work there. Fashion design with print, again, you've got the concept board on the left, so visual starting point. This was one of our Thai students who went to Central St. Martin's fashion design with print, and she then developed loads of ideas from her visual starting point, which was actually
I think it's important to say we've had some brilliant Thai students, haven't we?
excellent Thai students, yes.
And some excellent students from Crew 2 Homeschool.
Yes.
And the reason they're so excellent is because Crew 2 Homeschool give very good skill base.
Yeah.
Very disciplined. Then they come to us and can start to be more experiment and start to be more expressive and conceptual. But a very good starting point to Crew 2 Homeschool.
Very creative students who are not scared of trying new things out, which is wonderful, really. That's really important as a student, not to be afraid to take a creative risks, or try something new out. That's what this student did, and it really, really worked for her. Continuing fashion design with print, 2 other examples from the student that obviously you can see these are from the same project, and the board on the left, you can see
the development there. There's a real development, isn't it?
Exactly. And for fashion portfolios, we do really push fashion illustration. Fashion design courses are some of the most competitive courses in art and design, and tutors are looking for a good kind of visual communication skills, good illustration skills. That's really, really important. So we invest some time into that, developing of your own style, own way of drawing, own way of illustrating your final outcome ideas. Some idea development there as well. Fashion design, women's wear, again, a very different portfolio. This was also a physically made portfolio. Again, what you can see from here is that original way of illustrating, design development, sketching, which was noticed by those progression tutors who then selected the student to study on the women's wear course, which is very difficult to get into. But there's this kind of certain visual language that sets this project apart, with the use of these diagonal and vertical lines and colors. So again, each of these portfolio examples we're showing you, these are just snippets from different student portfolios, but you can see that they have something that makes them stand out.
Almost dramatic, isn't it? It's almost like a stage production.
Exactly.
It's almost like a drama when you look at those with their verticals and horizontals around. And the fashion design stands out almost against this drama.
Yeah. The students created their own space on a 2D board. It's
really
amazing.
important, really important.
Moving on to, we have some real success with jewelry design as well. We also have an outcome that I think you had on your presentation too, which I was really happy with. Some on the left-hand side, development work towards an idea. So again, if you're doing jewelry design or something for the body, it's very important that you try it on the real body, you photograph it on the real body, and explore how it could look and translate into a further development. Another student doing jewelry design, and again the student created their own material. The green material is actually jelly that the student made, and jelly is obviously very flexible and it's got this kind of way of behaving. So again, this kind of material exploration and innovation. Who would think you could make jewelry out of jelly, right? Well,
Thai people use the word like Americans, gelatine.
Yes, gelatine.
I think you use gelatine, and we say jelly in the UK, but you say gelatine.
Gelatine, okay. So it's something that everyone has in their kitchen, and usually it's used for food, but this student thought differently and made, an experiment in jewelry design out of it.
That's truly creative, isn't it? Truly creative way of looking at the world.
Yes, and that's what any university, any school would be looking for, that kind of different way of thinking. Loads of architecture examples as well. Again, there's two boards here, so they're quite close to each other. But again, exploring by drawing in different media materials, exploring by creating different 3D models, documenting from different angles. That's really, really important as well. Showing scale. If you look carefully on the right-hand side, you will see that the student has made a very simple model, but then they've added small people in to show how this model could look like if it was in real scale. It's a humongous kind of structure, actually, if you look at those tiny little people that the students placed there. So again, your imagination is the limit when you are being creative and innovative in a portfolio. Some examples from graphic communication, again, two very different projects, just snapshots, where you can see how a student has taken an idea and explored it in different ways. So a simple kind of soap foam marbling experiment that then is applied into an idea that is projected onto the body, and that was developed into a further outcome that I think ended up being a booklet. Or even a simple thing like a student inspiration was fruits, and the student on the right explored a banana, color study, texture study, experimenting, and kind of almost humorous. Humor is always a good thing as well, I find, in portfolios. I think, Mr. Kerrigan, you will agree, sometimes a bit of humor can go a long way.
Oh yeah, just to lighten up the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So you look at things in a serious way, in a light-hearted way, because that's what real life is like.
Yes,
real life isn't always serious, is it?
No, exactly. Well, here you could say the student looked at sort of really good things in life, chose Wagyu beef. Is that how you say it, Wagyu beef? And then that led into typography design, and you can see the thinking here very clearly, which is why we've chosen this example here. So
from some beautiful patterns and textures there, aren't there?
Yes, exactly, and even letters. That actually led into this whole print design and this branding, tasty, whatever, you know, and then how to apply that in a product on a simple t-shirt. It could go, you know, anywhere from that, but it's almost kind of linking into branding design, branding and packaging. With graphics, I mean, graphic communication is a huge area. There are specialized courses in branding as well, but within graphics, you can do quite a lot of things from advertising to illustration. And our students do sort of try out different things. Like here's a student who went into illustration, but did a project where outcome was branding and packaging. But it shows that, again, this is another Thai student, brilliant portfolio. I have to say personally really love, if you look on the left hand side, there's a greasy paper that, you know how chips are greasy, so she's actually used a paper from a chip shop as part of her mood board. I really like that. I think she actually had real chips on the mood board, but maybe that was unhygienic, so she removed them. But this kind of thing is really fun. Yeah. And then there's the outcome from that project. Obviously, these are just, as I said, small snippets of different projects, so we're not showing the whole portfolio. That would take too long. Another illustration example, this is from a same portfolio, just studies of human face, you know, features, and then going into more sort of character design based on a student photograph. Again, showing that ability to document and record fairly realistically, but then going into a stylized character design. So again, things like that are really important to show those abilities. And
illustration is becoming a bigger subject all the time, isn't it?
Exactly.
Especially with game design and character development for games.
Which we're moving to. We have game art and character design students progressing to these courses now. There is game design is a little different. That's I think more focusing on the actual sort of designing of the progress of the game and story. But game art, the student, for example, here did a project where she designed her own game and the universe and the characters, and this is part of her portfolio. Another Thai student.
We've had some outstanding Thai students doing game design.
Yeah,
outstanding.
Yes. Beautiful.
And a couple of them from through to a homeschool.
Yes, exactly. So again, this was an animation project, but it was part of a game art portfolio. So again, you know, although you for university especially, you should do a portfolio that's focusing on your progression subject. It's important to show a variety of approaches and ways of working. So to show an animation project in a game art portfolio can be a really good idea, especially if you have such amazing sort of illustration and drawing skills. Photography is another growing subject, and you know, one thing I would say in photography portfolios, you don't really require that much drawing. So that sometimes some students who do not enjoy drawing, they might choose photography because they enjoy photography, but oftentimes in a portfolio for photography, the emphasis will be more on the images and more on the visuals, which some students really like. But again, variations of one image is a great portfolio board for any project. We've got also fine art, some amazing students doing fine art. Again, these boards show excellent experimentation skills, good drawing skills, quite original way of presenting something. On the left, you have the artist's response to Dali, and then sort of further response in 3D, experimenting with texture and with form from the same project. And again, physical boards, so you can see how beautiful they can be. On the left-hand side, the student has even drawn, the black and white drawing is directly on the board and the color drawing. So sometimes students draw directly onto the A2 boards because it just creates that, you know, the atmosphere that they want and want to create. Showing your work in context in a portfolio is really good idea. So the student explored how her work could look like if it was presented in a gallery. Obviously, this is a digital visualization, but it can give the tutors a good idea of how you see, what scale you see your work at, same as for architectural models. More architecture, I think. So again, simple experiments, starting from paper and then moving to cement on the left-hand side. So if you look at the progression of the idea from a simple material to a more complex, more demanding material, you see the logical story evolve from the beginning, then drawing, and then to the second experiment. So these are good examples of how you can show development of an idea and trying out different materials. Again, student has explored materials and media. I think this was an artist response on the left. And we always, I think drawing is this fundamental part of any kind of design or fine art or illustration, graphic design sort of portfolio. So students may do 3D models, but then they draw from them, maybe details, maybe focusing on something that leads to another idea. So we kind of constantly come back to that drawing and sketching as part of that process. And you can see it here. Further architecture sort of process of the making of. Sometimes it's good to show the process in a portfolio board, not always, but sometimes sketchbooks obviously always show your process. You know, showing technical drawing skills can be a good thing as well. You will learn, you know, more specialized technical drawing skills and other skills at university, but obviously if you can display something like we see on this board here with really accurate technical drawings, that's also always great, but it's not a necessity. It's just something that can be part of your portfolio. Further experimentation in paper, and then moving on to illustration, final outcome mock-up. So testing out the idea in 3D in simpler, sympathetic materials, but then making the outcome in the real materials and visualizing the outcome in context, often digitally, but you can see that progress of an idea here. I'm aware of the time, so I'm sort of going through these a little bit faster.
It's fine, that's good.
Yeah.
Just to get an idea, Celia, we don't just to get a snap, just to get a quick look.
Exactly, yes. So more architecture, fine art, again, formats could be so different. Painting, installation. This is a booklet. You know, there's no really limit of what you should do. If you're doing fine art, you don't have to produce a painting. Fine art is such a vast area, and you can really kind of evolve and try out different things. Another area that our students are interested in is accessories, bags, accessories, footwear. This particular student is going to Cordwainers, UAL, to study footwear design. And the moon boots inspired by moon, so we can see the outcome here. Fashion design, menswear specialization, project inspired by Egyptian mummies. This is the final outcome of that project. And we can see how they've documented from different angles. Fashion design with knit. I think this is our last slide today. Again, you can see how the students
beautiful, isn't it? Very beautiful image.
Yeah. Unconventionally explored knitwear. I mean, who would wear a jumper like that, right? When we think of knitwear, we at ISCA, we kind of reinvent and change the perception of normal things. So that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Celia. Can I just summarize a few things before we end?
Yes.
I think it's really important that all of you preparing portfolios focus on a couple of important points. No top universities expect you to be finished professionals now, none of them. No one would expect you to have finished fashion design, finished architecture, finished product design, or finished paintings or sculptures or textiles. None of them would expect it. What they want to see is that you're actively trying to understand the subject, the painting, the sculpture, the fashion, the textiles, the architecture, the product design, the interior design, from a different point of view, in your own personal way. They will teach you how to be top professionals when you go on your degree course. But what they want to see now is all the ingredients in place, the curiosity, the desire to learn, the ability to be coherent, the ability to put things together in a neat way, in an ordered way, in an accurate way. They want to see all of those ingredients coming together, because first and foremost, what they're looking for is potential. They're looking for potential which they can help you develop when you get to the next stage. So all of the work you've been looking at shows that real sense of potential. When we're looking at students' work for ISCA, we're looking at raw potential. The next stage for foundational degree course, they're looking for even more potential, but no one wants to see that the story's ended. If the story's ended, they have nothing to teach you. They want to see this potential so you can now move forward on the A-level course, move forward on the foundation course, move forward on the 3-year degree course. And that's what this work shows. Anyway, it's been really enjoyable showing all the work to all of you. If any of you don't, if you may have questions, but if not, do any of the staff from Crew 2 Homeschool or ISCA have any questions? Any questions at all? And I'm looking particular at Kritin, who did a wonderful introduction to start with.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No, not really, sorry.
But is it clear? Is it clear what we've said?
Yes, I mean, you cover everything in your presentation. It's wonderful. And you also
that's
pardon?
good. Please continue.
Yeah, and you also summarize very inspirational summary.
And that's what we want to do. We want to say, we feel, I mean, there's a really important thing. Thai students are actually following the success of earlier Thai students, not just at ISCA, but at top universities in London. Our Thai students in ISCA in the UK do really well, because I think the Thai students bring with them a discipline and a sensitivity which lends itself to experimental art and design. So you're following in some really good footsteps as Thai students coming. And we've had a really marvellous relationship with Crew 2 Homeschool and ISCA for many years. Me from at ISCA and when I used to be at Central St Martin's and UAL. So you're starting off really well with Crew 2 Homeschool. We will put together this production again, this slide production. We're going to tidy a few things up and send it over to Crew 2 Homeschool and ISCA to make sure it's available to all of you as you start putting your portfolios together. If there's any further questions, then pass them through Crew 2 Homeschool. Anyway, really enjoyed it, and thank you very much, Celia. I think we've had a really productive hour with this.
Thank you.
Okay,
I enjoyed it.
so, okay, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.เมื่อกี้พี่กุ๊กได้เข้าไหมครับคือ
คนที่เข้าน่าจะเป็นน้อง
นี่แหละช็อตเลยนะเกมช็อตฟิลเลย
ไม่มีใคร
บอกเร็วจังเลยอ่ะเราไม่มี Q&A แล้วเหรอที่เราเตรียมกันไว้อะ
ก็จริงๆคือคนที่ชื่อ ที่เป็นลูกเขาอะเคอรี่ปะ
โทมัส
โทมัสนั่นแหละเขาบอกว่าจริงๆอะมันจะมี Q&A สั้นๆแต่คือคีย์คืออะไรหรือปะคือเขาบอกตั้งแต่แรกแล้วว่าให้เราเปิดกล้องเพื่อที่จะแบบเห็นหน้าอะไรเงี้ยแล้วมีพาวที่เปิดคนเดียวกับคุณแม่น้องทีอะ
มี2 คนที่เปิด
ใช่พาวกับคุณแม่น้อง
เด็
ที
ก
อะ
ด้วย อันนั้นไม่ใช่เด็กเหรออีกคนนึง
เด็ก
คุณแม่ไม่เหรอ
ไม่ใช่คุณแม่น้อง
แม่น้อง
ไม่ใช่น้องทีด้วย น้องทีไม่เปิดเลยป่ะน้องทีอ่ะ น้องอะไร ก็ไม่รู้
นั่นแหละเขาก็เลยแต่เกมลืมถามเลยนะให้ที่ A level อะแล้วกดหยุดก่อน
ไปตัดออก
เดี๋ยวค่อยตัดออก